the standard protocol since it's a public meeting. All visitors must sign into the visitor book at the Kilncraig reception. This includes council staff from other buildings. There is no planned fire evacuation drill or alarm test today, so if the fire alarm is activated during your visit, you must exit the building immediately. The council officers will direct you to the nearest fire exit and will escort visitors to the building fire assembly point beside the Silver Man at the top of Parliament Walk. Kilncraig staff should report to their floor's assembly point. You should remain at your assembly point until directed to reoccupy the building and only re-enter once the fire marshal has advised it is safe to do so. Please do not attempt to leave the site by vehicle and appear to do so by the fire marshal to ensure that access routes are kept clear for emergency vehicles. Please note that this is a public meeting and that members of the public may be in attendance. The meeting will be recorded by the clerk and published online for public viewing. Taking of photographs, including screenshots, audio, or video recordings, are not permitted during meetings unless with the express permission of the chair, or in this case, the vice chair. Can members attending virtually activate their cameras where possible to enable you to join by video, and can all attendees mute their microphones when not speaking? Please do not come in during items unless I invite you to do so. If members attending virtually wish to speak on any point, please indicate by clicking on the raise your hand button. Members in the chamber should also raise their hand, and I will bring you in at an appropriate time. If members have not been able to access papers for this meeting, please indicate by raising your hand now. That's fine. Today, we will hear each of the items set out on the agenda, and I will invite the officer to present the paper, and members will then have the opportunity to ask questions before we proceed to debate and decision. We'll now do the roll call and declarations of interest. As far as I understand, we want to take this on.
Yes, thanks, Chair. We've received apologies from Councillor Fairley, but we have Councillor Balsillie attending as substitutes, and everyone else is in attendance apart from Councillor Errol and Councillor Quinn, and that there is no attendance.
Okay, well, thanks. And Councillor Reddy also on the line. Excellent. Right. Declarations of interest. Do any members present have anything to declare in that regard? No. Fine. Let's move on then. The first item, just to confirm the minutes of the meeting of the Audit and Scrutiny Committee held on 5th of February 2026. And what I'll do with the usual format is we just go through it page by page, and if there's anything, errors, omissions, or corrections of any sort, please raise your hand. Okay, starting on page 7. Page 8. Sorry, yeah, skip one. Page 9. 10, 11, and 12. Fine. Item 4 is the police performance report for Clackmannanshire, April 2025 to September 25. This will be given to us by Chief Inspector Gary Smith. Gary, over to you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to everyone for this welcome to the Scrutiny Committee. Just introduce my colleague, Assistant Superintendent Lindsay Kidd, who is an operational superintendent for the division, so she's here to support the work today as well. From the report, I'll just highlight some key information, if that's okay, and then questions for any questions at the end, Chair, if that's okay. So I'll start with our people. As previously reported, during this period, we had stability again with our people. At the last board I was invited to, I spoke about the Enhancing Community Programme, which was launched in Forth Valley back in September. This continues to have a positive impact for us. So that was the creation of a community investigation hub, which was additional resource to support the council within Clackmannanshire. So this team is now established. So they are responding to non-urgent matters and support for line colleagues, removing demand from response policing to a more investigative strand of our policing. They assist with reports to the police where they're assessed as non-urgent, and thereafter they may be diaried, so the reporter to police is at the centre of the decision making there. So that restructuring created 5 new posts locally within Clackmannanshire, and I'm happy to report that 5 new posts, and we retained 4 previous posts. It was meant we had 9 posts within the Community Investigation Hub, and I'm delighted to say that 8 of those 9 posts have now been filled within Clackmannanshire. There is future plans to fill further vacancy as well as we move forward. Our community policing team again remains fully resourced, 2 officers per ward, and that's led by PI Angus, that some will have knowledge of and spoken to, and he is supported by Sarah Snowgate and O'Reilly. And recently we welcomed a new team member, so PC Brand came to Clackmannanshire to replace PC Andrews from the community team who moved to rural policing. We have 5 incident response teams continue to be based here at Aldermore, and they are ready to respond to emergency calls. Within those teams, I have 3 vacancies, but again, there's plans to fill them as we move forward. And recently, we welcomed a new probationer to one of the teams, and there's a further new recruit due to start within the next couple of months as well. So again, we're seeing that regular support for resource within Clackmannanshire from the force. And as I reported before, we have 2 school-based officers within Clackmannanshire across the 3 academies, and we also have an officer who supports the courts. And we have a weekend policing plan that we put in place every week, and that supports our communities identifying risk areas and potential threats and responding accordingly. And I'll just say that Clackmannanshire remains a safe place to live and visit. Our current threats, as far as I can see, are domestic abuse, crimes of violence, possession of supply of controlled drugs, antisocial behaviour, and crimes of restorative. I'll touch on some of those at the moment. So during the reporting period, in terms of violence, disorder, and antisocial behaviour, we did see an increase in certain violent crimes across Clackmannanshire. There are numerous instances within the report of the type of call that officers are dealing with and the type of investigation that they're carrying out. And that's to give a bit of context. Majority of the time, persons who are being assaulted know who their attacker is, and we have good detection rates for serious crime. There was 15 serious assaults reported, which is 1 more than the previous reporting period, and that detection rate is strong at 80%. There was 12 robberies and similar crimes such as assaults with intent to rob, which was down from the comparison. However, the detection rate was 50, and that will continue to move as forensic evidence and additional evidence is incentive. We did experience an increase in common assault, which is non-injury or very minor injury crimes. Within that reporting period, and the detection rate is recorded 63%. Again, we can't always corroborate such crimes, so not all crimes are detected, but we're sure the committee and the public that we make every effort to identify who the persons responsible are and bring them to justice. Unfortunately, police assaults continue to be recorded. Within that reporting period, 28 police assaults were reported. However, there was no serious injuries sustained by officers. So, my hope is with the introduction of body-worn video within Clackmannanshire, that may change the level of violence and violence that we're seeing. In terms of antisocial behaviour and disorder complaints, so whilst the stats within the reporting period are suggesting that it's reduced, I also appreciate that not everyone is contacting the police that are experiencing antisocial behaviour. So again, it's a positive in terms of stats. The reality is there is still antisocial behaviour ongoing within Clackmannanshire, and we work with our partners to address that. I did meet recently with colleagues and partners, some within the room, to talk about the antisocial behaviour strategy as well and next steps forward for that. As I said, each week we have a policing plan which is created to task officers with the key threats We proactively patrol the sort of locations and we target key nominals who are involved in that type of criminality. All officers are briefed before they commence their tours of duty, and we identify concerning locations and ensure that our resourcing is there to address and to pursue any crimes. Calls and contacts to the police and reported crimes intelligence that we receive, we scrutinise that daily. So we try to get ahead and figure out where our hotspots are so we can deploy accordingly. Community officers will continue to patrol their areas, they engage with the communities and they do follow up on concerns. Sometimes that's in plain clothes, so in terms of visibility, you may not see a uniformed vehicle or a uniformed officer, but officers are still around the communities. Our school-based officers and community officers also deliver inputs at schools and clubs, such as the Hive in Alloa, and highlighting the dangers of antisocial behaviour. That includes violence, alcohol, drugs misuse, and the serious consequences of fire raising as well. And again, just to give some context around what else we are doing, we do continue to seek opportunities to work with partners to reduce antisocial behaviour. And in the coming months, we're going to be working with youth development coaches alongside community officers to target young persons and trying to divert them away from antisocial behaviours. There's a mention within the report about the early and effective intervention process, and this is ultimately used for some antisocial disorder reports as well. So within the report period, 77 young persons were charged. 4 of those young persons were discussed at a multi-agency meeting for diversion routes. 3 were referred to other agencies for support and guidance. 42 were given a warning. The remainder were reported directly to our partners. What we'd say is antisocial behaviour isn't just youth offending, there is also adult offending in various themes that we're seeing across Clackmannanshire. And we do work with our partners, particularly in housing, health, social work, criminal justice, to basically reduce the antisocial behaviour committed by adults in our communities. We have the multi-agency partnership Strive, which is a vehicle for us to support persons who may be committing antisocial behaviour or on the cusp of and committing crime. And that early intervention gets better income support for the persons that go through that process. And also work with charities and addiction workers to understand the threat of drugs misuse within the financial, so that we are targeting the right people who are exploiting vulnerable people. Again, within the reporting period, our stop searches increased, and this is a tactic that we regularly and routinely use to target and reduce antisocial behaviour, providing that it's legal and proportional. That's to search people. So, all of recent, there has been a rise in reporting off-road bikes being used across Clackmannanshire, some of which community members will probably have contacted you. So we have recognised that and we're doing work round about that. So we're recording incidents and we'll follow up, pursue the riders and in some circumstances parents as well, as they may be committing offences as well. Of recent, we have seen 3 bites within the last 2 weeks as we set up our response to this. Education is very much key to this, so we'll be educating children within the schools, but also parents as well in terms of the potential offences that their families children to commit as well. Recently, last week, we had a couple of officers from Clackmannanshire attend the national working group in respect of it. So looking at different tactics that have been available throughout Scotland to see what we can adopt locally here in Clackmannan. We will be putting plainclothes officers in the communities. We will also reach out to specialised teams such as the drone unit, for example, to try and assist us with identifying those who in the vehicles. Just touching on the spoke about drug supply, so detections for supply are up, and production has increased within that reporting period. And that's credit to the intelligence and information that's been provided by our communities. So again, I'd like to just thank the public for doing so and to engage with the police. Again, some of the intelligence-led operations is an activity as is recorded within the report. We do take action on the intelligence and information that the public have provided us, and as you've seen, 18 warrants were executed in that period. Again, we continue to use stop search as a tactic to tackle corruption issues. I'm going to touch upon serious organised crime in terms of county lines, so probably a term that most will be familiar with. It's a national threat and it's a threat across Scotland. And this is where children are exploited by serious organised crime groups, whereby they're using children to organise and distribute drugs. And generally, a phone line is used to facilitate that drug supply, constantly from groups that are in big cities, reaching out to locations. So within Police Scotland, we have a dedicated operation running, and we have direct links into the National County Lines Coordination Centre, so we can understand what that threat is across Police Scotland, and we're continuing to develop intelligence in relation to that. Locally, the officers are aware of this threat, and will continue to develop and cultivate intelligence where we can. Our harm prevention officer delivered inputs within that reporting period to professionals and carers, highlighting the dangers and the risks of county lines and seeking that additional piece of intelligence. So, in terms of Police Scotland, we can't do it ourselves. We need that support of professionals and carers, communities to support us in terms of that. What I would reassure people is that don't have any public intelligence that are county lines operating with the manager, but again, that's based on intelligence. We need that information feeding in. So if somebody has a concern, then absolutely feed it into the police and we can make an assessment and deal with that accordingly. In terms of acquisitive crime, we know within the report, shoplifting was reduced by 12% within the reporting period. Our officers continue to engage with retailers, providing advice and target hardening advice. It remains a crime that's prevalent within Clackmannanshire, but it has been reducing from previous years. A factor within that is potentially the custodial sentences for some of our repeat and prolific offenders, which is usually still a lifetimes committee. We did have additional funding just over the Christmas period, which was extended until March. Now that allowed me to put additional officers out to target retail crime, so picking up on undetected crime and progressing them as well as physical retailers, and that led to a number of detections for sort of historical crime. I would also mention that since we've introduced DESP, which is the digital evidence sharing project, CCTV for our retailers is readily available to us now, so we can get that much easier. So rather than having the complications of seasonal disc and then trying to get it to play or formatting, we send an invite out to the retailer and upload the footage to us. That increases the speed and efficiency in which we can then try and get identifications. I think at a previous committee, Kat previously spoke about the Retail Crime Task Force. So this was a national unit that was set up by Police Scotland. So it's there and it's there to support local policing. They focus on the high harm retail thefts. As a national resource, we can tap into it. We haven't had the need to do so up until now, but it is a resource that's available for us should we really to go down that route. The next threat I spoke about was domestic abuse. So during the report period, there has been an increase in domestic abuse incidents, and there has been a slight increase in the number of crimes that we have recorded. So for me as an organisation, we're continuing to improve and attempt to break down the barriers. An increase isn't necessarily a bad thing. I think that shows that there is more confidence in policing, and hopefully we are delivering a more trauma-informed service and getting the trust of survivors and being able to speak to us and have the confidence that they're going to listen and take their reporting forward. Again, they can be very challenging for us to investigate, but with the introduction of body-worn video, it gives us another element of evidence to tap into as well. again, within our, um, our investigations, survivors are supported by our domestic abuse liaison officer, who will contact survivors after the events, chat through some support, signposting to relevant agencies to seek support. And if there's any additional information, that will be fed back to investigators for us to further the investigations. We regularly engage with MATAC and MARAC meetings, which is the multi-agency response, targeting perpetrators and also safeguarding survivors as well. So that is regularly sit within those meetings, and again looking at the high harm offenders. Also within the reporting period, we've had 10 breaches of bail compliance, which is again one of the prevent measures that we have to target those offenders who are repeat offenders or continue to cause harm to their partners, etc. And again, within the reporting period, the disclosure scheme for Domestic Abuse Scotland saw 41 applications and 18 disclosures made. I'll touch upon hate crime as well. So within the report, the stats suggest that there has been an increase in hate crime. So in the stats at the back, we've seen 77 crimes reported. That is despite, it's just to provide some reassurance, that is as a result of a review of how we report hate crimes and hate incidents. And we have recognised that our reporting could be improved. So we have done, that has led to the increase in hate crime. So that has, as I say, a spike that in every instance we see within Forth Valley. In terms of road safety and road crimes, again, it remains a priority for ourselves. Within the report is mention of the fatal five, which is careless driving, drink driving, not realistic death, speeding, and using a mobile phone. Within that reporting period, 137 hours of speed patrols were conducted. That led to 86 penalty notices and 49 warnings were issued to motorists. 152 parking penalty tickets were issued last year, and 132 of those were in the town centre. And year to date, we've issued 70 tickets, predominantly within our town centre. 64 vehicles were removed within that reporting period for various offences. And again, dangerous driving detections, whilst they've decreased, but an increase in terms of careless driving, speeding offences, and other motor offences as well within that reporting period. I'll pause there. That was the kind of highlights in terms of the Western Harlem that I mentioned at the start. I'm happy to Superintendent, she has wants to meet.
Thank you, and morning everyone, and thanks again for having me along. As Chief Inspector Smith said, I am Lindsay Kidd. I'm the Operations Superintendent for Valley and deputising this morning for Chief Superintendent Irvin, the Divisional Commander, who can't be here today. I think Chief Inspector and the Area Commander has really covered the key highlights for Clackmannanshire. I think it's a really detailed report that has been laid out, and the key highlights that have been teased out. I don't have anything specific to add over of that report, but I'm content to take any questions that you have, Vice Chair or anybody else that's present and support the CI Smith with those. But just thanks for having us.
Thank you and welcome to the party, as it were. Gary, you talked early on in your run through there about recruitment, etc. I'm wondering, is the area now up to full establishment, or are you still understaffed?
Sorry, it's here. We're not fully staffed. We will always carry vacancies within our teams. In terms of our community team, that's fully resourced. In terms of community investigation, I touched upon, there's one vacancy, but there is plans to fill that gap as we move forward. Our incident response teams is generally where we will have vacancies because people move on, they transfer to different jobs, they may be promoted or they may leave the organisation, and generally that's where we hold our vacancies. Now, 3 out of sort of 48 posts is not significantly harmful for ourselves. So There is plans again, one of those posts, a new recruit will fill, so it takes to two, but then we will have transfers and promotions to deal with. So where we can, and this is where our service delivery team at Stirling assist us with it, they'll identify where the gaps are and where they can support with either the movement of staff but internal within Forth Valley or supporting people who are transferring money from divisions into Forth Valley. So as a division, we will always hold vacancies, but we'll never ever reach our full establishment, as I say, because of the various movements within policing. However, I'm more than comfortable with where we are as a subdivision.
That's fine. So it's not going to affect your effectiveness, really. That's fine. The reason I was asking was that I noted in the detection rates going through the data of the report, I think with a single exception, they were all down in comparative. And I just wondered if that was a staffing thing. Is it something else that's affecting the detection rates?
It's not a staffing issue. I think sometimes the detection rate is a snapshot in time, so we will have further investigations that are ongoing at the moment. So we may have, as I touched upon, evidence. We may have communications evidence that we're still waiting for. So other areas of Police Scotland may be slightly backlogged, which then impacts us in terms of the front line. Unfortunately, every crime can be detected, and that's a challenge for us. So, as I said earlier, our office will absolutely explore all avenues of evidence that's available. Here is a sufficiency that will be charged and reported accordingly, and that's not always achievable. Say the community investigation hub, which is another investigative strand that's now been stood up, and they are seeing better results in terms of the times that they're taking on. It's difficult, as I say, because it's a snapshot in terms of where we are during that period. But as I say, we're constantly reviewing our detection rates, providing training and support officers with potential lines of inquiry. We scrutinise our crime reports as well to make sure that supervisors are making sure that all lines of inquiry are carried out before anything is done. So,
Thank you very much. Councillor Fortune.
Thanks, hi Gary. I want to ask a couple of questions about antisocial behaviour, if that's all right. You're saying that reports are kind of going up for this on the increase. I'm just wondering what the threshold is for antisocial behaviour. What kind of pushes it past maybe, kind of just jump up hanging about doing something into antisocial behaviour? And given the amount of effort that's put into diversionary tactics, which if it's increasing, don't seem to be working, what else can we be doing, particularly kind of working in partnership around that? After this meeting, I'm going to on a town centre walkabout with Rachel, because the number of youths kind of congregating in the town again, going on the shop roofs is on the increase. Now that decreased when a lot of effort went into setting up signs. It's clearly not working anymore. If the kind of the incidents are up again, and Rachel's quite keen to see what we can do round about the town centre there. So yeah, I'm just a bit perturbed into what more we can be doing if the diversionary tactics in place aren't working.
It's a really valid point in terms of where we can support. I mean, what we're trying to do is not criminalise people as well, and it is the diversion route. So working with our partners is say that they can do opportunities with sector organisations such as the High or the youth champions or youth. Sorry. The youth development issues that have been offered up for us, they will work alongside the community, and we will try and establish what's the kind of root cause as well. So, is it lack of opportunities for young persons? Is it a group that's creating these? There's various, and until we get to the kind of root cause, I think it's difficult because we are responding, we're reacting to it. We're trying to be proactive. The community officers do go out and engage with young persons, education, listen to reports and make the space to kind of get the front foot. It's not always the case. So again, I would, we have scope for partners in terms of different opportunities. Education is a big one for me in terms of youth offending and social behaviour. And we do a lot within our schools. The school-based officers are well experienced and they deliver regular inputs to children round about all aspects of social behaviour. We've experienced a number of fire reasons. It wasn't in the last year, it's really something significant. And it's actually educating kids in terms of this is consequences here, but it's actually the parents and guardians also need to be educated in terms of when our children at night or what they're involved in and how they really support us and our partners as well. It's a difficult one, but absolutely we do all we can to support the idea and seek other opportunities. As I say, until the kids engage with us and tell us why they are engaging in what we're doing, it's difficult to see what watching and what isn't.
You would commit discussions in that.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Again, in support everything the area commander has mentioned there. I do think perhaps when above some of those strategies, there's perhaps an opportunity to look up and out. And what I mean by that is, can we have a look at antisocial behaviour strategies and best practice that we've seen working well in other parts of the country and engage and collaborate, not just within the partnerships within the manager, but reach out to partners wider than us to seek some of their advice and strategies about how they specifically tackled it. Because I think the challenge is types of antisocial behaviour that we see continue to evolve and change, and therefore the way in which we respond to it, we almost have to try and continually be ahead of the curve, and that can be really, really difficult. But I think we can learn a lot through that close collaboration and partnership working as well. So let's just add that in. Thank you.
Thank you. You want to come back in on that?
Yeah, just on the first point about what is it that constitutes antisocial behaviour. So, I mean, I'm really keen that young people are demonised, and there's no an idea that a group of, kind of teenagers hanging about is automatically antisocial behaviour. So if you get a call from someone saying, oh, there's a group of youths, and you go and they're just actually hanging about the park and maybe, kind of do what young people do, would you log that as antisocial behaviour? Or would it take, kind of something else to make it antisocial behaviour?
We wouldn't necessarily log it as antisocial behaviour unless there is criminality or disorder or something that is a menace to the community. Something like that, my expectation would be the officers will engage with the children and ascertain why they're there, if there's opportunities to get them to those skate parks as parks is invested in, or introducing them to the hive, etc. So it doesn't necessarily get recorded as antisocial behaviour, and our control command will reflect that as well.
Just before we go to Councillor Rennie, who's next in the queue, I think I wanted to just add maybe a rider to that. It was put to me recently that in the old days, if a child was taken into custody for an offence of some sort, they were then taken to a central point, I think it was Falkirk, and the parents had to come and collect them from there. Now it seems to be, I am told, that the police here have to take them to their home, so they get a free taxi ride home from the event. That to me seems an opportunity missed to involve the parents in discomfort rather than the police in the discomfort having to travel. The parents are disturbed, asking them, Clyde, be Johnny or be Susie, then they've more motivation to do something about the child's performance. What's your feeling on that?
No, I accept the point, but in terms of our response to our children and the shape criminalised, so removing a child from a location such as that manager taking them down to Falkirk to then sit potentially in a cell or be supported by officers, it takes officers away from our communities as well, because they're now sitting with that child until a parent can arrive. How we address that is those children are removed and returned home. officers were engaged with the parents in the house, so the message is still getting passed to the parents and guardians.
Right.
It's not that that's diluted, it's just in terms of children. Is it the right and correct means that they're taken down to a custody centre and experience a negative experience? I don't think that's right, and I think the way in which we manage that and support the child understanding why they may have committed a crime, but explaining that to the parents and seeking the parent support as well. I think that's part of the positive outcome.
Okay, thanks. I see we've got a request by Margaret Lewis of Social Services. Is it on that point? Margaret.
Hi, good morning. Sorry, yes, I was just trying to unmute myself. Apologies, yes. As Senior Manager of Justice, I just wanted a bit of a reassurance that the robust early and effective intervention for young people through our early help team within Children's Services, and that's kind of joint work with Bernardo's, where we pick up all the young people where there's kind of early signs of coming into conflict with the law, and we have really good relationships with them and outcomes from that. And also just that we're not seeing an increase in referrals to the Scottish Children's Reporter on offence grounds within Clackmannanshire Council. And I take note, obviously, you've already spoken about kind of not wanting to criminalise young people. I just wanted to give reassurances that we do review our early and effective interventions through the Care and Protection work stream of the Children and Young Persons Strategy Group, of where all our key partners sit, and we are looking to further develop the earlier effective interventions for young people in conflict with the law around antisocial stuff that you've been talking about. I don't know if that's helpful. Apologies.
Okay, no, thanks very much for that, Margaret. Councillor Rennie, I'm sorry we've kept you waiting so long. You wanted to come in with the question?
That's fine, Chair. Yes, and apologies for my preamble before I ask my question. I will get to one because I'll see Chris getting tense, but look, I will get to a question eventually. I would like to thank you for a really comprehensive report, because it actually answered a lot of the questions I had, as did Councillor Forson's question, but it still leaves me with some sort of thoughts. All of us as councillors, we do a lot of walking around our communities, and obviously there's a very strong smell of cannabis in each community that we go around. We obviously realise that drug and alcohol use within communities has a root of quite a lot of disadvantage and a lot of people who are really struggling in a lot of cases. And there's also a risk of exploitation at the back of that too. In areas like the United States, SAMHSA, you're talking about UK-wide approaches. SAMHSA in the United States have taken a community development approach to dealing with issues of substance misuse, and bearing in mind that they also have an impact on domestic abuse very significantly. I just wondered what sort of engagement you're doing in a community development way, and obviously Margaret's already touched on the youth justice side, which is really helpful, because obviously quite often substance use is really connected with that as well. And I just wondered what engagement you're doing with the drug and alcohol teams and the Health and Social Care Partnership and others. I know you've mentioned the third sector, which is positive, but I often think a lot of people in silos are doing bits and pieces of work. And I just wondered how much all of that work's being brought together, really to have a preventative approach, because I feel that that's fallen away over the years since I was involved in working in drugs and alcohol, to have that preventative approach, because I'm seeing it I've been in Clackmannanshire working in the field for over 20 years, and I don't see it diminishing. I actually see it increasing. And obviously you can't go to every door and there's a smell of cannabis, I'm going to go in and see what's happening here. And obviously a lot of the issues of exploitation of people being exploited with drugs and alcohol be under the radar. So sorry, I'll come to my question. So I'm just wondering what you're doing in more preventative spheres.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor, for that. So as I touched on in the initial kind of brief, we do work with our partners. We're working with addiction workers to understand how the threat is, and those that are exploited within our communities. We're looking to build that intelligence picture, and it's that change in mindset that end users are vulnerable. They are potentially being exploited by groups. So getting that intelligence about those who are supplying, targeting suppliers, rather than, again, criminalising those who maybe have an addiction issue. So we have regular meetings with our partners. Have kind of every Wednesday we have one of our partner agencies visits ourselves with officers, and the addiction workers can share information as well, and really think about that prevent. Kind of collectively within Forth Valley, we do have again regular meetings that is chaired by our partnership superintendent, and that is looking at that whole approach to drugs harms. So some of the work that's happening within Grangemouth and positives that they're seeing down there, we will be able to introduce here as well, working with our partners within criminal justice, social work, NHS, etc. So we are aware of the harms, we respond to it. We look at such as non-fatal overdoses as well, and see what prevent measures we can put in place as well, as a result of non-fatal overdoses. So again, there's lots of positive work. We will never eradicate, unfortunately, drugs misuse, but it's how we respond, as you say, and it's changing that approach to a preventative, rather than targeting those who are in possession and users. It's actually back up the tree, looking at those that are causing the higher harms, and targeting those individuals and those groups that are causing harms in our communities. I hope that gives some.
It does, thank you. It's good to hear you discussing in a preventative way. I had one other question, if you can bear with me, Chair, just on the domestic abuse side, but also bringing in crimes of rape. Obviously, we see in a lot of these cases when they get to court, there's no corroboration, or quite often they don't even pass the procurator fiscal. So I was just wondering if the officers are now bringing in the new legislation about asking members of people's lives, basically, about the impact on them, to enable strengthening those cases before they get to the procurator fiscal stage.
So every report of a sexual crime, including rape, is dealt with by specialist trained officers who will explore all avenues of evidence. They will develop and, as you say, they will look at all avenues of evidence. I don't want to sort of give specifics away, but they are treated as a high priority crime. And as such, our CID and public protection units will come together. They will be led by a senior investigating officer. Some of that evidence may be, to say, might be historical, it may be previous partners for such instances where there's been domestic offending prior to sexual crime happening. That may involve our task force as well, our national task force to support divisions. But every report of rape and serious sexual crime is treated as a sort of mini major investigation. As a result, it's SIO'd by a senior officer who's well trained in terms of serious crime. And as I say, all avenues, all sort of intelligence, evidence, everything that is pulled together and progressed. So that may lead to a detection. It may lead to, unfortunately, an insufficiency of evidence. But again, they will always be reviewed, and if further evidence comes to light at a later time, whether it's another witness comes forward, whether there's evidence from mobile phones, whatever it may be, that will all be reassessed. And where there's an opportunity to report people, we will do so.
Okay, thanks very much.
Okay, next it will be Councillor Earl, followed by Councillor Bennett and Councillor Balsillie. Councillor Earl.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Firstly, I'd like to congratulate the police on the report. It's an excellent report, and it highlights some really, I don't know if it's the word good or shocking, because it's actually bringing a lot of the information to us that we weren't aware of. But on page 33 of your report, you talk about road safety in Alloa. Now, while I'm glad to see the amount of tickets that have been issued being on the increase, unfortunately, the message doesn't seem to be getting across, because there's still, for every one that gets a ticket, there's another 2 or 3 waiting to take its place, to take parking spaces. So hopefully, once the car parking situation is decriminalised, and the council will go forward with hiring officers to deal with that, it will take some of the pressure off the police, and perhaps we may see more things happening. However, my question is that was okay for the town centre, but as you go down to the train station, you walk down there, and I've seen down first thing in the morning, talk about 9, 10 o'clock in the morning, I as a non-driver, can identify at least 10 people that are parking unlawfully, parking on pavements. There's an area set aside for women and children to go down. Cars are regularly parking on that. Is this an issue is this an area that the police have been aware of? And if so, are you going to go down there as well as the town centre? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. In terms of parking, I agree, and I'm working alongside Clerk Manager Council in terms of that proposal to decriminalise, and it is moving forward some time away, so the responsibility in terms of enforcement does remain on Police Scotland, and we do respond where we can, demand and capacity allowing, but as I highlight in the report, lots of other offending has risen. Disorder, violence is on the rise. So our officers are out investigating those crimes as well. So where there are opportunities, we absolutely will issue tickets. So the focus has predominantly been on Alnor Town Centre. I certainly wasn't aware of the train station being an issue. However, I'll reflect that to the community policing team and get officers down there to review that. I think recently, in the past couple of months, there has been issues at a number of schools as well, primary and secondary schools. So again, we've put some additional resource and people down there to kind of educate drivers rather than issue tickets. And we'll continue to do that. So it is about that engagement. It's about warning and education. But where there are clear offences, then obviously parking tickets and other measures will be taken. So thank you for raising that, and I'll certainly take that back to the team and get some additional work down at the train station.
Thank you.
Councillor Benny.
Thanks, Chair. Just very small thing, it's actually not that small. The illegal bikes that are going about. I live in the Albury end of the town, and they're getting. They seem to be getting much more brazen. And it must be really, really difficult for you guys to actually find them, because they're all in black. And they're on the pavement, and then they're on the road, and it's that long straight bit of road up until the junction that causes me concern, because there's a lot of youngsters going up and down for school, and there's also a lot of elderly people trying to get across the road to get a bus. And it's, I watch them because I'm right in the centre of it, so I can see them, but there's no way you're going to be able to catch them because they're going so fast and they're in black. So how do you work that one out?
So I think it's a really good point, Councillor, and as we say, we will look to use all tactics that are available to us. So it may well be that we will engage with our communities, and that's part of our strategy for it, is getting that information in from the public. So when calls are coming in about going that wee bit further, who is it that's driving it? Because the majority of these kind of young persons that are driving it live within the communities, so we know who they are, but we need people to respond and engage with us and give us that information. Thereafter, we can visit the houses where there's defences committed, we can seize the bikes, etc. But we need that engagement with our community. We need that information to come. as I spoke about, they've had some great successes elsewhere in the country by deploying the drone unit, which will be up for a period of time and then take the person back to where they're going to stay. So there's opportunities there to identify who the riders are. But a big thing for me is as we touched upon, the safety. They're incredibly dangerous, they're powerful machines. And it will take long before someone steps out and is struck by it or worse. And that's where parents and guardians who are buying these machines need to step up and have a bit of responsibility as well, to be honest. It is frustrating, and I know recent weeks we've been chasing around youths across the kind of the county as well, and it is difficult because they're so agile and just accelerating their own performance. So that's where we have to then record the crimes properly, and we then have to investigate properly. And sometimes it might take time, so we might not see an instant, that's such and such been serious, it might take us a while to get there. But my hope is we will get there, but we need that engagement of techniques as well.
Thank you. Councillor Balsillie.
Thank you, Chair. Within the reporting period, there's a general trend of physical assault, common assault. We've got domestic violence going up 15, 16, 17%. And indeed, the officers in the report period, you're saying there's 28 assaults within the reporting period. I was wondering your reflections on that, because we'd obviously experienced that probably in our schools as well, but more importantly, you raised the issue about body-worn video recorders as a deterrent. So I'm interested in updating that as well in terms of, has that been fully rolled out within Clickmanager? And do you see body-worn video recorders potentially being useful in terms of recording and pursuing crimes both in the retail sector, public sector, like the fire, even dare I say in our own schools? What's your experience there that is a useful deterrent as well as bringing people to justice in terms of the evidence sort of factor there?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. So body-worn video is still live now. Excuse me. Still alive within Clickmanager. All officers are trained and it's used for response officers or investigation hub officers and community officers are all equipped now with body-worn video and they routinely use it. In terms of that correlation with violence, officers are responding to a call when violence is happening in front of them. Body-worn footage is terrific. It records past 30 seconds until the buttons hit the record. So it gives another sort of bird's eye view of what's happening in front of them. Where it doesn't support is crimes that have happened and then we respond hours later or where it does give us some advantage there is when we are capturing the trauma and the experience of the victim of an assault. Body-worn video support it in terms of how that person has been affected by it. In terms of our own officers, it can be a deterrent, and we've seen it occasionally where officers have given a person a warning and their demeanour changes. Maybe without that, they might have escalated, or it might have led to further violence. But it's certainly a useful tool. I think the rise in crimes, our crime recording has changed slightly as well. So where in the past we maybe responded to a fight in the street where a member of the public has said two persons are fighting or outside a licensed premises. If everyone's dispersed upon our arrival, we report a crime. Our crime recording has changed slightly so that we won't record that as a crime and we would pursue that. On those occasions, it may not be anything that is known within the location, it might be visitors, so it becomes very difficult to then identify who those persons are. So there's a bit where crime recording has maybe contributed to some of the rise in terms of the stats within it. But again, body-worn is another tool in our arsenal. I mean, the officers' views and their observations are obviously critical. Body-worn video something similar, isn't it?
And do you see that getting rolled out elsewhere? Do you see any potential use in other civic areas?
Body one body is national at the moment within Police Scotland, but I think I've seen it and experienced it in maybe some of the room have certain retailers deploy it as well. So for their security officers and guards, retailers will have it. So if you go maybe into the Thistle Centre in Stirling, they will have officers wearing body worn, and that's replicatable as well. So there's advantages to that, because that again gives you that instant recording of what has happened, and it supports us in terms of prosecutions and supporting that evidence with sharing with the fiscal service. So again, that body worn video for those types of scenarios where it's live and it's readily available, you can get that quickly using the desk system. So share an invite, the person who's in control of it, people can arrive comes in quickly, and it makes that whole process really efficient for us. So I think it's a fantastic tool. It's benefiting us. Suggest that there's opportunities it's doing, and certainly retailers and other persons and like the NHS, I think we're considering it as well. In terms of some of the risk at these sites and locations. So I think it's definitely available.
I've just got one other question. I mean, I could cover the bike issue and the car parking and all, but I wouldn't think it's been areas of concern for us as local councillors. The other thing that I have though, when people contact me, they're always saying, "Oh, the police aren't important." I said, "Well, ask for an incident." But in your reporting here, I'm not getting a sense of the overall complaints that I'm not talking about. There's a big section of complaints against the police, which has gone down, so they've got to be commended for that. But in terms of the general complaints about crime and getting an incident number, I've got no sense of the scale getting reported with things like man and shouting over and how to analyse that against trends. I haven't seen anywhere in the report. And I'm just wondering, am I missing something, or can you do that in the future? I know it'd be probably a little bit meaningless because as are broken down in categories, but it'd be good to get that overall view in terms of the number of incidents that get reported, whether they're going down or not. And it comes under this police confidence thing where people are maybe, thing I get is like, it's this, there's no point in reporting vandalism because the police don't do anything about it. So I was wondering if you get any reflections on that.
I think that the reason maybe unclear is because the categories were broken down, the crimes are broken down. Now, if it was an ask, then I could give you a kind of a total of the amount of calls or the amount of incidents that are recorded through Scotland. But that is only through one means, so that would be through a storm management system. We also have contacts that come in every day from members of the public through emails directly to community investigation teams or community officers. So the scale in which you're asking could provide partial response to that. But
I suppose, to be honest, it'd just be those that have asked for an incident number or whatever, if we're trying to quantify it. I'm just trying to get the scale of the issue to try and deal with, and has it gone up over the years, or is it, probably goes like that? But yeah.
It's certainly doing work and provide the scale in which sort instances are raised. Now, within that, we will have plethora of types of calls, and we can try and categorise the types of calls. Some of that, some of which don't result in an incident number being passed to a member of the public because they get called for somebody who's in crisis, or they need call for another support agency that might never actually touch flat manager. It might come into our C3 colleagues who will make an assessment based on the crime and decide that's not police issue, that goes elsewhere. So again, the number of calls received for Police Scotland within this area, we need to do a bit more work to kind of balance out to show you a kind of clear picture of what demands you're seeing.
I guess the question would be how meaningful would it be, but I would genuinely be interested. I'd be genuinely interested in the incident numbers that are being issued, because that gives us a quantity of people that are concerned enough to ask for an incident number. And such those. If that could be done, if it's easily done, then I think it might be useful to add to the report.
So what it may not show is the number of incident numbers that we pass to people. That's not a stat that we would routinely retain. What we would have is the complete of the types of call, the nature of calls that have been categorised. We also have the kind of national your survey as well, but the results have recently come out for Pit Manager, and unfortunately there's less than 20 respondents, so as a result the responses are proceeded with ourselves. So in terms of that public perceptions, and I can speak from experience of other areas I've worked in, complaints generally are that police officers don't return calls, they don't update them with where their investigations are, or maybe supported them with a crime or something like that. So again, that's something that we train and we colleagues are doing. They are going back to the complainers and reporters and just giving them that courtesy and that update. Then doesn't cost anything to be. So it's something that tends to be the complaints from the public. It tends to things. It's something, as I say, that we're on trying to address, but without the kind of use of the information, it's difficult to assess that public.
It's,
Thanks, Chair.
and then you have been out, right? Councillor Keogh. Aye. It's the Joint Operational Trade Standards. Can I ask, is that stored in Shilling Hill? Is that stored in Shilling Hill? If it was Alloa, certainly. That was one of the town centre. So just so you're aware, they're still selling cigarettes every day. So if that's the case, that needs to be reported back into ourselves, and so we can engage with trading standards. So I think that premises has been targeted twice by operations. So if we're continuing to do that, then please get the public to report that in. I'll take that back and we'll feed that in as well. Truly, about 5 and 6 o'clock, about 15 minutes, you see people sitting there standing up, wait. That's one of the course. So it's back to antisocial behaviour. There's a small corner in Shilling Hill, usually during the summer, people hang about drinking. And you're told there's nothing to be done because it's a public area. The last year, the council and yourselves said there were probably something to sort that out. Do you know if there's anything to be done yet? Sorting out in terms of our joint approach to it, or so I'm aware that there are areas of concern within our communities, and our community officers will respond to that. So we'll visit it regularly. If there are opportunities to detect crime, we will do. If there's opportunities to move people on, we'll move people on as well. So if it is a concern, then again, please contact me out with us and we can discuss. It's just that I'm up there and the older people's business gets from meal shops because they're sitting there drinking and shouting and things like that. So I'll let you know if it's thanks. No, thanks very much, Councillor. I'll include that in terms of our policing responses, kind of weekly policing planning or weekend policing plans, and we'll reflect that. So the more information we can get our resources to the right people, we get people to the right places to target it, that they don't know about it, then it can be difficult. So, as I said, for Ross, Pit Manager, where there is pockets of issues of disorder or social behaviour, we need to encourage people to report that into so that we can put our people in the right places. Fine. As a final question, the chair's privilege to go slightly off the menu. Have you any plans to do anything with the old police station up at Tullibery? That building?
There's a storage facility, don't think they have anything.
So I think that's been sold, I don't think that's.
Has it?
So I don't think it's an ex building anymore, so.
Yes, said.
Fortunately.
Okay. And there'll be no, how's the vote?
Yeah, I just have a quick question. I noticed in the report that said that there was 2 incidences of speeding in Clackmannanshire where the speeds were in excess of 100 miles per hour. I was just wondering if you knew where that might be. You probably won't have that information, but I would be interested to know where that was. I wasn't particularly sure that we had stretches of road that would allow to get up to that area, and if it was in built up areas, etc., if there was anything else we could do to maybe help with that.
Yeah, thanks, councillor. My first thoughts would be it was just the Clackmannanshire, which that tends to be where significant speeding happens, so I suspect that's where it's been back in.
Thank you. Technically, the Clackmannanshire Bridge, although it's called Clackmannanshire Bridge, is not in Clackmannanshire.
I think if we're finished questions then, we're on to proposing the paper, which I'll formally propose as an excellent report. Contains a wealth of information, thank you very much, and some interesting anecdotal stuff at the beginning. So I will formally propose, do I have a second for the paper?
I'm happy to formally second and thank the police for the extensive work they put into this. And as I highlighted earlier, acknowledge the significant drop in complaints against the police that I was seeing. And but also note the concern, the rise in physical violence across the crime recording, and indeed, as you highlighted yourself, Chair, the actual drop in detection rates. But it's pleasing to know that the police are all full complement, and that I'm sure it could do with more resources, but the body cams are fully implemented throughout the good thing.
Fine, do we wish to debate the paper? To contribute to debate? Councillor Keogh.
It's just a detection rate on shoplifting. I think a lot has to do with staff surveillance as well, because we know that people consider time, so it's just a long distance.
Okay, any other contributions? In that case, quick show of hands, we might, what's the word? Approving the paper, thank you. Yeah, that's fine, excellent, that's unanimous. So, thank you very much. I'll see you next time.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you all for the invite this morning. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Item 5 on the agenda, which is the fire performance report, which I think will be given to us, the Station Commander David Small. Let's see we have online. David, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, members all, good morning. Thank you for the invitation along to today's audit and scrutiny meeting. I'm Station Commander Davy Small. I have relatively recently moved into the area as of October last year. I'm Station Commander for both Alloa and Tillacucci community fire stations. I'm here today deputising for Group Commander Des Donnelly to present the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service Q1 and Q2 of 25-26 performance report for Clackmannanshire, covering April 1st to 30th of September in 2025, and to support the committee to scrutinise the report. Before I start, just one short point to note on today's report. As you'll be aware, this report actually was delivered by Group Commander Des Donnelly in October of 2025. At that point, the statistics within the report were provisional, subject to ongoing quality assurance, as well as our reporting systems generally have a few-week lag period as well. Therefore, the all incident data at that point may not have filtered through. But today's report provides a robust picture of the 6-month period for scrutiny purposes. If I can summarise the period in 3 headlines, and I'll go on to speak to each of those a little later in my presentation. First would be life safety outcomes. and we recorded 0 fire fatalities and 3 fire casualties within the 6-month period. Second would be demand on us as an area. So crews responded to 437 total incidents, including 142 fires, 241 false alarms and 54 non-fire incidents. And thirdly, our main risk themes and focus would be accidental dwelling fires. They remain a priority, primarily linked to cooking and or cooking appliances within this reporting period. Deliberate fires, which remain a partnership priority, and unwanted fire alarm systems, which are showing a marked reduction compared to previous years, which is a positive direction of travel, and we're working to sustain that position. To further touch on accidental dwelling fires, we recorded 16 accidental dwelling fires within the reporting period, with cooking as a key cause, which does mirror the wider national picture and remains a clear prevention priority for us as an organisation. In terms of what we're doing about it, we continue to prioritise risk-based prevention through our home fire safety visits and referrals from partners. So we reach those who are most vulnerable within our communities before incidents occur. Within the reporting period, our local operational crews and community action team within the area carry out a total of 85 home fire safety visits. We also continue to engage on risk recognition, training and referral processes with our partners, including presentation to partner groups, so that referrals are both timely and high quality. As a point of assurance, we conducted 2 rescues in connection with accidental dwelling fires, one within each quarter of the reporting period. The report does note that due to consistent small numbers in accidental dwelling fire casualties, any increase on a quarterly basis can look like a spike. However, the key assurance is that no fire fatalities were recorded and continued target prevention activities are ongoing. In terms of deliberate fires, within the reporting period, we have 69 deliberate fires, with reports showing that notable contributions from grassland, woodland, crops and refuse. These incidents are concentrated mainly within north and south wards of the area. This does remain an area of focus for the organisation and partners to reduce deliberate fire setting and associate antisocial behaviour. In terms of what we're doing to mitigate and support within these efforts, as our community action team supports fire setter interventions delivered in partnership with local schools and partners including campus police and community justice organisations. We have increased high visibility community patrols in specific locations linked to antisocial behaviour and fire setting risk, often conducted jointly with partner organisations and the community police, who we work closely with within the area. We also conduct water safety patrols in known hotspot areas with partner support, again focusing on prevention and early intervention within the area. Targeted reassurance work that we are ongoing or within the reviewing period certainly, but that do continue now, is we receive concerns locally of antisocial behaviour that creates fire risk and respond with visible reassurance activity. There was a recent, I believe within the reporting period, at Harbour Way within Alloa. So there was antisocial behaviour and deliberate fire setting happened within that area, and how we responded to that was through operational crews and community action team carried out reassurance visits, targeted leaflet drops and direct engagement with every homeowner within that sort of area, offering home fire safety advice alongside information sharing with the community policing team. In parallel to that, those ongoing activities, our fire safety colleagues engage with the building factor of that premise, to address combustible storage within communal areas and to reinforce safe escape routes and non-compliance to fire safety legislation. So again, as a point of assurance to the community, deliberate fire trends are tackled best through a sustained partnership And the examples above show, the examples I've spoken about within and that are noted within the reports of ongoing community activity reinforce our approach. And it's not just about reactive attendance, it includes prevention and protection interventions at the community level. Moving on slightly, I'd like to touch upon our unwanted fire alarm signals. UFAS are most commonly known. So within the reporting period, we report 56 unwanted fire alarm signals. And this describes a significant reduction compared to previous reporting years. We continue to monitor UFAS closely and apply a service approach to reduce repeat mobilisations while maintaining appropriate attendance to high-risk premises. We engage with duty holders on causes, improvements and new detection technology, and we continue stakeholder engagement, particularly where UFAS clusters in specific premises types. Our UFAS strategy is about reducing avoidable demand without reducing public safety through risk-based attendance policies and stronger duty holder compliance. Touching on protection and enforcement as well as non-domestic fires within the reporting period. Our non-domestic fires, the report indicates our non-domestic fires are relatively low over the comparison period, with no reported fire-related casualties from non-domestic fires within the Clackmannanshire during the reporting period. Protection activities, our fire safety enforcement team completed 23 audits and 10 consultations with local authority area, which provides assurance around compliance and risk management in relevant premises. Beyond incident response, I want to highlight the ongoing community action intervention work that sits behind these outcomes, specifically targeting the reporting period. Partnership training and presentations on risk recognition and referral pathways, including regular presentations to adult support and protection partners. We carry out public engagement, stalls at local events, for example, carers events, community carnivals, family information days and college fresher fairs to promote prevention messaging. Youth engagement, so we've got our fire skills course which we conduct here at Alloa, and which I'm sure a lot within the room have attended previously, and I thank you for that. And I take this opportunity to offer an open invitation to anyone who would like to attend these courses in the future. These courses continue to be a positive intervention, including working with young people at risk of disengagement and our wider community cohorts. School engagement in assemblies, including water safety and antisocial behaviour prevention inputs, offered across local schools, including digital resources for classroom learning, which we can provide to schools and do continually provide to schools. Referral pathways, we continue to receive urgent home fire safety referrals from partners such as Women's Aid through the Multi-Agency Risk Assessment Conference, telecare services, mental health teams, our Scottish Ambulance Service colleagues, as well as Police Scotland, which is exactly how we target high-risk households effectively. In closing, the assurance that I can offer the committee is that we are maintaining strong life safety outcomes within the area, targeting prevention where risk is greatest through our home fire safety visits and partner referrals, sustaining progress on our UFAS reduction strategy, and continuing active partnership interventions on deliberate fire setting and community risk. The two partnership asks that would help most to the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service would be one, would be continued and increased referrals through vulnerable residents into our home fire safety pathway, and continued support with premises duty holders and stakeholders to keep the UFAS down and improve compliance throughout. Chair, that concludes the highlights of the report for Q1 and Q2 of 2025-2026, and I'm happy to take comment or questions on that report.
Thank you, David. We'll put questions now, open questions to the councillors, from Councillor Balsillie, followed by Councillor Forth.
Thank you, Chair. I noticed, David, within the reporting period, the only trend that's going up is deliberate fire setting, and indeed moan towards Clackmannanshire North it's the woodland grassland fires that are cause the most headache and the most visibility as well in terms of the whole of the locals, which is probably why people are doing it. But I was just wondering, have we had any successes in identifying who's responsible for some of this sort of fire setting? And if we haven't, how do you think we could work with the police more effectively to try and identify the culprits?
Thank you, Councillor, and that's a very valid question. Absolutely, there has been a spike within the reporting period in deliberate fire setting. I think attributed mostly to the similar period as of now last year. Particularly in April, we had a particularly hot and prolonged dry period within April, which did see a spike right across the area in the deliberate fire setting, mainly attributed to youths within the area. I was made aware of certain trends that were happening on social media that we liaise quite heavily with our community policing partners to discuss in terms of there was a deliberate fire setting. I think there was I don't want to name which social media platform it was on, but youths would be setting fires, taking videos of it and then posting it on social media, and then the trend would then continue and ultimately increase from that point across the area. So we have engaged very heavily with our community partners, police being one of the main ones. I believe there is a lot of ongoing work at the moment to identify these groups, not dissimilar to the youths on the bikes in the area. It's very hard to identify them and without unnecessarily criminalising certain youth groups. But what I can offer in terms of assurance is, following on from that period, there has been a notable drop-off in that. And the partnership work that we are doing, and I liaise quite heavily with my policing partners, albeit I came into the area at the end of the reporting period. We have a good relationship and we quite often regularly share information. So I'd be confident in saying that the individuals in question are being identified and action is being taken to address that, as well as obviously the ongoing work in which we're doing within the community in terms of raising awareness and early intervention with identified youth groups through our partners. I hope that does answer your question, to some extent, Councillor.
It does, David. I know it's a very difficult area, and I think as you've highlighted, it's an annual trend. I've often thought going into the schools might help, but I think it's just that type of activity that's very difficult to stem and stop, and it must just be an education issue we need to tackle in terms of the impact on the environment. So thanks for your report on that, David.
No, that's a very good point, Councillor, and just to touch on that again, we do carry out, did within the reporting period and continue to this day and beyond, as antisocial behaviour assemblies within our local senior schools, as well as providing a suite of materials to teachers so they can also deliver input within the classroom setting.
Yeah, thanks for the report. Got two questions that are not related at all. The first is, a couple of years back, there was the kind of policy intervention about putting interlinked smoke alarms in properties. So I'm wondering whether that investment is actually starting to, kind of provide, the early warnings, and whether it's allowing detection and, I suppose, earlier interventions if there is a fire. And my other question is, where we do have the accidental kind of house fires, and you've mentioned like cooking is one of them. When these are within council properties, do you actually feed this back into your kind of tenancy management teams so that there can be discussions with tenants and supports put in place around these areas? Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Yeah, absolutely. I'll touch on the first point raised there in terms of the interlinked smoke alarms, the ones in which we provide. Definitely, I mean, how it's measured, I don't know how I could offer statistics on that in terms of how the interlinked alarms are reducing risk compared to our standalone ones that we were installing previously. But generally speaking, you know, the number of home fire safety visits that we are now doing are decreased because the amount of people within the area that are deemed as high risk has now come down with the prevention activities that we've carried out over a number of years. We continue now to identify people within the area, and those who, and ultimately at this point in time, we only deal with high risk individuals from the area and vulnerable people within the area, and all of those will be entitled to interlinked alarms. So the assurance, I suppose, from myself to the committee would be that through a referral pathway via our partners and through the targeted work that we do, we are only now offering home fire safety visits to the most vulnerable within the communities, and all of those will be offered unless they are in council properties or landlord-owned properties, will be provided with interlinked smoke, heat and carbon monoxide alarms as well. So that would be my assurance to the committee on that front, and I hope that answers that element of your question, but I'm happy to revisit that in a second. And the second part of the question, Councillor, could you just remind me what the second part of that was, please?
Just when you attend for, you know, an accidental dwelling fire, if it is the council tenancy, do you kind of feed that back into your teams?
Absolutely, yes. That has always been the case, but essentially I speak for myself, since coming into the area some 6 months ago, what we now do is our community action teams, when they're involved, and they're not necessarily involved in every home fire safety visit because our operational crews also take a quantity of those. What I do at the end of every month is I do an incident overview. So essentially scrutinise the incidents that have happened over the month period and make sure and communicate with a monthly meeting with my community action team to make sure they're feeding that information back in, and also to make sure that I'm taking any actions that I need to progress out of that as well. So yes, absolutely, that information does get fed back into the appropriate parties.
Okay, Councillor Rainey.
Thanks very much, Chair. Some of my questions are a bit linked to what's already been said. On the first one, that was excellent to hear all the work with young people, and I was wondering, you were talking a lot about social media discussions. Do the fire service engage on social media in terms of putting out posts to show the kind of risks that are there if with willful fire raising, in terms of, you know, taking away fire service time that could be going to an emergency, or the risk of wildfires? And then my second question is kind of linked to Ellen's question in terms of, do you link with the Health and Social Care Partnership in terms of potential adult support and protection, where there may be vulnerable individuals with hoarding or various things that may increase fire risk, or people who are very, very vulnerable, to maybe target those as a prevention rather than after something's happened?
Thank you, Councillor. Very valid questions again. So to touch on the social media element, absolutely, we do engage in social media. It's something at an operational level anyway we're getting better at, in terms of stations have their own social media, not all, but most, and we're increasing this, have their own social media presence, putting out communications, such like the ones that you've said there. We also offer on our website, and we do give out to partners, is social media materials that they can post on their own social media pages as well, raising awareness to numerous different risks, I suppose, within any sort of thematic point of the year. So yes, there is a social media. A community action team also have a heavy social media presence as well on that front. In terms of risk recognition, if I understand your question correctly, we offer risk recognition training to our partners. So again, a lot of our partners will be in households before we are, and it's understanding, it's that training is to raise awareness on what could be a perceived risk for the fire service. Hoarding is absolutely a key one of those things that if they do and they go in, and it's obviously it's rated in terms of the scale of hoarding, and we give input on that, as well as many other potential risks, and give input on to our partners on those, so that they can essentially use the embedded pathway that we have at the moment to refer those back into us, and then we can do some targeting on that and try and get out into those households and provide further intervention and support where appropriate. We do, which you'll probably be aware of, we've got a home fire safety app, which we have launched the partner element of that, which will make, we have an established partner pathway and it absolutely is robust and it's working well. To make life easier, we have the app version of that, which will make referrals so much easier, which is going through fairly robust, or very robust, should I say, GDPR compliance testing at the moment. And we hope to launch that soon. I don't have a definitive timeline on that, but that will make the whole process a lot more fluid and easier for partner referrals. But absolutely, we do. We're engaging with new partners on a daily basis, trying to onboard them into the referral pathway, as well as offering out, whether it be in-person risk recognition training, which we absolutely deliver, but we also have an e-learning suite that they can do themselves, which runs through all the sort of risk recognition criteria. I hope that answers your question, Councillor. That'll follow up on
That's
any
great.
part.
Thanks so much. Really good to hear. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor.
Yeah, David, you'll be pleased to know that I had a list of questions, that most of which have just been asked between the other two councillors. It just shows how the committee seem to have a general feeling and general concerns about fire. At the moment, the station in Kilmartin Road is undergoing some renovation works. Is this affecting your response times in any way?
Thank you, Councillor. Absolutely. Hopefully you can't hear it, but I can very much hear the ongoing renovation works at the moment. So no, as a short answer to that question, absolutely not. There is no detrimental effect on our response times due to the ongoing works. The ongoing works, if you're not already aware, to give a bit of backdrop on that, is to help the station comply with our now established fire contaminants standard operating procedure, just to make the flow of the station work a bit better in terms of when our operational crews return from incidents and they are contaminated. Once obviously a level of post-incident decontamination happens at scene, they come back and we need to have a station that flows to allow them to enter the station, get themselves cleaned up, clean equipment, etc., without further cross-contamination of any other parts of the station. So that's the works that are ongoing at the moment. Quite significant, but and what I've said to my operational crews here, because as you would expect, there's a bit of turbulence because we're a live station and there's works ongoing.
Yeah.
But the reassurance to not only my staff as well as the wider area is the investment that's happening at this station. Significant investment is happening at the station. You know, in a landscape at the moment where all public services are stretched financially. I think it's very reassuring for me, certainly, and for the wider area that the investment's getting put into this station, which will speak volumes about the longevity of this station. But ultimately, you know, to circle back to the original point, there is no detrimental effect whatsoever. We have contingency planning in place as well, so if any of the works that are going to compromise anything in terms of power or our mobilising systems, then I can invoke certain parts of business continuity and then redistribute assets to, say, Tillickidry, for example, and maintain a response from there. So we certainly have plans in place, but absolutely not at this moment in time, and we don't foresee any issues with an effect on our response times due to the ongoing works, Councillor.
Well, thanks very much. Thanks very much, David.
Thank you.
David, do you as a station commander, do you record the number of station hours that you spend on prevention and the number of station hours you spend on dealing with incidents? And over time, if you do record that, have you seen a shift in the balance between the two?
That information absolutely is recorded. I don't have figures to hand at this moment, but I'll quite happily furnish the committee with them in writing afterwards. But absolutely, the prevention activities, prevention is one of our key priorities within the organisation. We have done fantastic work over a number of years in targeted interventions and ongoing prevention work. And we are seeing, you know, the balance shift from some years ago where it was more response than prevention in terms of the balance of numbers. Whereas now that there has been a significant drop-off in incident types due to the amount of prevention that we've done, which is exactly what we want to be doing. You know, as a fire and rescue organisation, especially in this day and age, we want to be out there preventing incidents from happening, you know, to be more proactive than reactive. So in terms of the actual figures, I can guarantee, I can reassure you, they are recorded. I don't have them to hand at this moment in time, but as an outcome of the ongoing prevention work that we continue to do, and in fact, if anything, our prevention work within the area as well as the wider organisation is increasing, because we're very regularly looking outwards and thinking, what more can we do? You know, what can we assist with? What can we support with? Whether it be our partners, whether it be you know, our colleagues in the ambulance service or the Scottish Police Scotland, should I say? Sorry. As well as a constant look at how we can further provide value in terms of the firefighter role, which is an ongoing conversation through the Fire Brigades Union as well as the Scottish Government. So absolutely, we're constantly looking outwards to see what we can support within our current sort of abilities. But as an overall, all incident types, particularly accidental dwelling fires, are down as a direct result of our ongoing prevention activities.
Great, thanks very much for that. Any further questions? No, we'll move to, I will again formally propose the paper on the basis that another excellent report from one of our local utilities services, and I think a success story by and large. Okay, so we have a second, Councillor Thorson, you want to say something to that?
Yeah, I'm happy to second the report. I think it's pretty clear that a lot of the work that the fire service does isn't probably what people traditionally think the fire service do. And it's really good that report's here, and hopefully there can be a bit more public awareness about it. Certainly from my perspective, I would say that the fire service is a really front and centre kind of local presence. And whenever I'm out and about at different events, I was at an event on Saturday down at Little Stars Nursery, and you know, there was an engine there and there was officers there who were really interacting with the children and the lambs actually, and you know, kind of parents, etc. So it was really good to see, and I just think that the preventative work probably goes unrecognised, and that's a bit of a shame, because as you're saying, it's having an impact on, you know, kind of the impacts of kind of the fires and rescues, etc. So a good report, and I was really happy to see it. Thanks.
You wish to debate the paper?
Can I just say a few words? Just thank Fire Service for the report. I think it is a bit concerning that the only upward trend is in deliberate fire setting. And I probably didn't touch upon in I think the main concern area is people that are burning refuse, the deliberate bin fires and things like that are actually more of a risk probably for human, both human health, human life and property values and property. So that is a concern, and it probably does point down to the preventative work that the fire brigade do in terms of going into schools and indeed the fire safety checks that we do. And I know they're starting to work with our community resilience teams, particularly along the hill routes for flooding, and I would encourage them to continue to do that. So just to thank them for the report.
Councillor Rennie?
Yeah, I just wanted to commend you on a fantastic report. It always is. But I mean, certainly it gives us so much information as a committee, as you'll have heard from the questions, for us to come back. But just echoing what Councillor Forson said, the fire service have got such amazing interpersonal skills when they're out in the community. They're absolutely swarmed with children coming to talk to them, and really excellent at handling that with people at all levels, from young people right up to people who are vulnerable. So, and I know it's not an easy job at all. It's a very, very challenging role to be in. So to have that balance, to being able to respond to really incidents that must be really challenging, to being able to engage in an interpersonal level, I think is a real skill, and I highly commend your service for what you do.
Thank you very much, Councillor.
Any further contributions? Right, quick show of hands to be approved the paper. Yeah, excellent.
Councillor Ella, take it. You did it. Thank you very much. See you next time.
Fantastic. Thank you all. Thanks again for the invitation, and I shall excuse myself from the rest of the meeting. Thank you all. Take care.
Right, paper 6, the corporate performance 24-25. Speaking to my Cherie Jarvie. Cherie, hello. Over to you.
Thank you and good morning, councillors. So this report presents the council's annual corporate performance report for 24-25 and provides committee members with a comprehensive and evidence-based overview of council performance aligned to the Wellbeing Local Outcomes Improvement Plan. The report presents a strategic and balanced assessment of how effectively the council is managing resources, delivering outcomes and responding to risk, using consistent evidence across trends, targets and benchmark comparisons, highlighting where the council is performing well and where sustained challenges remain. It evidences how performance is being measured across the full scope of council activity and how partner contributions are integrated, bringing together a wide range of evidence to show not just what performance looks like, but why results are changing, where risks are emerging, and how the council and its partners are responding. Appendix 8 of the report forms part of our statutory public performance reporting duties and was published on our website to meet the statutory 31st of March deadline. Information is presented in the report for each priority outcome, highlighting significant achievements, challenges, and planned improvements for future reporting on performance. Overall performance results show that whilst the council continues to operate within an extremely challenging context and there is still much to be done, we are tipping many things in the right direction and making steady progress in improving people's lives and outcomes. Over half of indicators are assessed at amber, with nearly a third at green and a sixth or 16% at red. Performance against targets set is the most positive area, with 60% of those at green and 22% at red. In benchmark comparisons, 19% of indicators are in the top quartile, with 27% in the bottom quartile. Wider contextual factors are also included in the report, with deprivation and health inequality a recurring issue, limiting opportunities and quality of life for many, combined with reducing public sector budgets, global events, pandemic legacies and cost of living having clear local impacts. It should also be noted that club managers' small population means that comparatively low numbers are involved, with spikes and dips in performance more common in club manager than perhaps in other areas. A summary of key performance achievements and challenges is highlighted in the cover report at paragraphs 3.4.4 and 3.4.5 under the outcome themes of wellbeing, economy and skills, places and best value, with full detail provided in Appendix A. Myself and colleagues are happy to answer any questions you have on the report.
Thank you very much, Cherie. Councillor Thornton.
Yeah, I've got some questions, as you would probably imagine. First of all, the format of the report, is that a kind of national standard if we decide to kind of do it in this way ourselves? I'll tell you what it is. I found it quite difficult to interpret, particularly around about the graphs. And I'm not sure whether it's the colours or whether there's sometimes so many different indicators on the one graph. Sometimes there was indicators together that I kind of thought, why have they been put together on the same graph? And I'm just wondering whether that's us and something we've got control over, or whether it's something that's set down.
So we've got control in terms of how we lay out the report, and I think the report does touch on some of the improvement areas. So absolutely would welcome feedback on how it's presented. We do have a requirement to consider accessibility standards, and I think that's included in the report in terms of colours, format, size of font, these kinds of presentational aspects. But we are looking at making improvements, as part of our continuous improvement effort on how we present the information in terms of dashboards and visuals. So that's certainly something that we can look at for future reports.
Thank you. Now, a lot of the things that are reported here are areas that are out of the council's control. They are very much areas where there's a partnership working, but the spotlight always seems to be on the council. This report comes to the council. I don't know if this report also goes to the fire service, the police service, the health board. Is it coming to the community planning partnership? So I suppose I'm just trying to tease out a little bit there about how, as a community planning partnership, we kind of deal with the information that's here, because most of it is not within the council's control.
So I think that is a really important point. What I will say is the statutory performance direction has changed. And one of the things it does require us to report on as a council is how we're working with partners and communities around performance. So it very much is something that we are required to present in this report. Obviously, the performance is aligned under the outcomes in the Wellbeing Local Outcome Improvement Plan, which is a plan for Clackmannanshire signed up by all partners. And there's a lot of reference in the report to partnership strategies, partnerships, ongoing work that we're doing with communities and in partnership. And I think that's been a shift in this report based on previous reports as required under the direction. Absolutely, there's a lot in here that is beyond council. I think a lot of the wider, external factors, pressures, are not within the council's making. They are contextual factors that we are having to respond to along with our partners. And, any engagement that we can or should be doing with the community planning partnership, I think, is important. And we could certainly look at bringing this report or a version of this report to the community planning partnership.
I think that would be helpful. There's a lot of things in here I'd like to ask questions on, but with all due respect, not you or other council officers will remotely answer that. So maybe the community planning partnership is the area for that. If I can move on to a couple of areas within the report that stood out for me. If we look at the kind of child poverty rate, and I'll be no surprised that I'm kind of raising this, we put a lot of effort into, kind of tackling this. And I know that other partners do as well, but unfortunately it seems that regardless of what we do, the figure in Clackmannanshire, still seems to be an outlier, particularly against neighbours and across Scotland. I'm just wondering if there's any thoughts as to what more we can possibly do, but whether there's any indication of, if we hadn't been, completely focused on this as a council for the last while, whether the situation would be even worse.
I've asked Lorraine to come and help answer that question, but I think the report does also pick up on that. There have been a number of interventions that have been taken. I think, the report recognises that potentially that indicator and also some of the other ones that are key challenges could potentially have been worse, but I'll pass over to Lorraine.
Thanks, Councillor Forson. I think we've heard in previous reports presented to the committee today about the interrelated factors that contribute to child poverty. And I think what Clackmannanshire Council has been trying to do, along with the partners in the CPP, is to address some of those symptoms, the root causes of poverty, as well as how people are experiencing that. So I think things would be far worse if we weren't doing that. There's some recent child poverty figures which are not represented in this report, which have just been published, which does show that Clackmannanshire is making some progress with child poverty. It's not great in terms of big figures, but it is a positive figure. In fact, we're making more progress with child poverty than any other local authority in Scotland. We look at child poverty before housing costs and child poverty after housing costs. our housing costs, and I did check this for the housing department when I saw those figures, for many of our families who are living in smaller accommodation, our housing costs are actually lower in Clackmannanshire. And again, that's one of those things that we can contribute. So I think there's a wide range of things that we can do and that are making a difference. We've got free childcare, we've got lots of work going on in terms of prevention and early intervention. So, but I think what is fair to say is that those things don't change people's lives overnight. I think we're going to have to work at this really hard, relentlessly for a very long time. And year on year, it's really hard to see that progress. So when we do see a marginal increase like that, we think, right, we've got some gain, but we can't give up. We just need to keep going. So that work that you have signalled in terms of working with our partners, with health, with police, with the fire service and the third sector is just all the more important if we're ever going to get on top of this. So I think if that answers your question, I think it's just more and more of the same with our partners. We're leveraging in a huge amount of money now to Clackmannanshire, as you know, through those partnerships. And we're trying to address antisocial behaviour. We're working with Planet Youth. We're doing a huge amount of interventions around girls, healthy masculinity. All of these things contribute to the child poverty figures at the end of the day, but we are addressing them all, and I think we've got a really strong approach to tackling poverty in Clackmannanshire now.
I've got another couple of questions. This is a very interesting report. I was interested when I was looking at the cost to deliver our early years offering in Clackmannanshire. That stayed quite consistently above the kind of Scottish average. And I'm just wondering what the reasons for that would be.
So I am going to ask Adrian Aitken, who I think is here, to come and join me. She has the detail around, she leads on early years. But in general terms, while Adrian is coming up to join me, we have, perhaps Michael will have something to add to this if required, but we have had a very generous offer in Clackmannanshire for some time. And as you know, due to budget decisions in the last couple of years, we have been amending that offer, which has meant that we have actually reduced the flexibility for some parents in terms of that offer, in terms of what is available. Adrian can expand on that, I think, probably.
Thank you. Morning. Yes, so previously when we launched our 1140 hours across Clackmannanshire, we were able to offer a wide range of choice and flexibility across our 4 extended year ALCs and our nursery classes. As that has progressed, what we have had to do to be more efficient in our model is to align the amount of flexibility that we can offer. In that, in doing so, that's helped us to reduce our staffing costs, ensure that we still have a degree of flexibility for families, but make our model more efficient. There's also a difference across local authorities in staff costs. So we have to take that into account too. So we have had higher costs, but we're working hard to reduce those where we can without reducing quality and while still maintaining a degree of flexibility for families.
Got another couple of questions. When I'm looking at the progress over the attainment gap, poverty-related attainment gap, we are making some progress there, and I think we're making really good progress in the literature area. That doesn't seem to be the case in numeracy. There seems to be a sustained, kind of trend of that's not really improving there. And I'm just wondering, given that is more of a trend, what are we doing to reassess the interventions that we're taking in relation to numeracy? And are we going to be keeping a bit of a closer kind of eye and focus on that for the next wee while?
So you're absolutely right. Numeracy has been a stubborn one for us to shift. It's been harder for us, and it's historic. It's been there since I joined the council a number of years ago. But there's a number of work streams that are underway, and I'll ask Adrian to explain those.
Thanks, Lorraine. So particularly in numeracy, what we've done is interrogated the data, because the information that you see overall is a combination of primary 1, 4 and 7. So we've taken a really strategic approach and put a number of interventions in our early stages. That's included supporting professional learning within our early years workforce and our primary 1 teachers. And we're seeing some improvement there. That work is then going to continue through supporting our first and second level, but we are finding it a little bit harder to get those ongoing sustained improvements in numeracy. But our attention is being, it's tricky, isn't it? We don't want to take our attention away from literacy because we don't want to see that drop, but so we want to sustain that whilst increasing the input and strategies towards our numeracy improvements.
I see that Judith put her hand up. She wants to put in a contribution. Judith?
Thank you, Councillor. Sorry, it was just in relation to Councillor Forson's previous query about the cost indicators. I think the way that the cost indicators are framed in the framework needs to be revised, and I was actually just discussing yesterday with finance colleagues about how we do that. Because if we call something a cost, it sounds like a burden. But if we call it an investment, it's something we're prioritising. And I think we need to do more than just, at the moment, we have a blanket rule that I use and aim to minimise threshold for cost indicators because we need to make savings. But there are now some areas where we are reaching minimum viable operating thresholds. So I think we need to get more looking at using the cost indicators to profile the area and think about how does this match up to our priorities. So if we're saying these are our priority outcomes, do our cost allocations directly relate to that? And I know obviously a huge amount of work goes into that throughout the budget process, but I think it's, you know, so it's sort of weighing up, and workforce is a big issue in that respect as well. So it's sort of matching up these profiles of spend, priorities and staff allocation, and making sure that they're at the right levels rather than obviously just always looking to cut costs wherever we can.
Judith, you should be a politician. Cost over investment, I would say. You touched a wee bit there on what I was going to come out on my last question. We've got all this data here now. What are we going to do with it? Because we get this every year, and I'm not convinced that we always, you know, kind of do what we should be doing with it. And you're absolutely right. We've got priorities, and I would be expecting our costs or our investment in our priority areas to be significantly higher. So if you know, kind of education is a priority for us, well, our costs would be higher, and that or our investment is higher, and that's what we see kind of coming through these things. So what happens now? We've got this. Is there going to be a bit of an analysis done to make sure that the spend is tying up with our priorities? Are we going to do a bit of a reassessment, and is there areas where maybe we need to reduce spend or increase spend? I know a lot of that will be for councillors to decide through priorities and budgets, but we need to do, you know, more with the stats and the information that we've got. So I'm just wondering what's next.
Well, for me, it's sorry. So, for me, it's too much in one report. You know, I think my job is to try and do this broad summary, pulling on elements that all services are dealing with. For one, I would like every staff member to see themselves represented. You know, I think it's important that not only in relation to the statutory duties, but also in relation to staff being able to see what they're doing, for communities to be able to feel that their needs are represented. So I think the single static report is not a modern way of doing that anymore. And I think what I have very much got in mind is more profiles and data out with committee reports, because I think that's sometimes you know, where some of the duplications are arising, or contradiction, which is worse. And I think producing data profiles which are then referenced by committee reports and summarised at higher levels, because I think that's it's about using that detail but then looking at the broader higher level picture. So what, and I had been talking about these deep dive data events that we would maybe look at, sort of how we can tease out some of these things. But I think a lot of the work is about breaking it down, looking at, you know, particularly in relation to risk strategy as well, looking at where the actions are already taking place, and then to what extent they are going to make improvements, and more appropriate target setting in relation to that, more detailed, and and so that the priorities are represented in our targets. So the ones with the most challenging targets should be the things that we see as the highest priorities. So I think there is a lot to be done. There's a lot to be done, particularly about how we're presenting it. I fully take your point about how some of the data is presented. I have to say, part of that is my drive to reduce the length of committee reports, because I think that's just switching people off immediately. I think the more page count, there's some people that will just close a report immediately, and we should be inviting people in rather than putting them off. So, I think we need to really look at particularly the language, getting jargon free, and framing things, and discussing the issues that are relevant to the communities and not just to the internal experts who understand all the complexities. And so I think there are things that we can do. As always, the capacity issues are a factor, so we do need to look at proportionate. So it's particularly about building in iterative improvements, but I think we need some slightly bigger steps as well. And I would also like to use the next time we do the scrutiny performance and risk training with yourselves, I would very much like to get into a bit more of the detail about what is good and bad about these reports, and how we can be doing that better.
Okay, I'm sure that's been very helpful. Shiri, you want to combine them?
Yeah, if I could just add to some of the points that Judy has made around, plans to kind of continually improve how we report performance and how we use that performance information. And I think how we use that internally is important, but also how our residents and public and communities are able to engage with the information on how the council is performing is also really important. So any improvements we can make to make that easier for them to engage directly with us through dashboards, through direct web publishing, and I know some of that information was contained in the report. The other element is around how we use some of the data that's in that. So Judy mentioned doing deep dives across outcomes themes, so that's some of the work that's already underway. The other area of work that we do is around our best value continuous improvement work. And the performance information is linked to our kind of improvement, our ongoing improvement actions through the best value, linked in with our internal and external audit, linked in with our corporate risk management approaches. So all of that information, all of that data is assessed on a regular basis, corporately and at service level, really to drive improvement and how we're designing services, delivering services, focusing priorities, focusing investment. So it very much isn't just a standalone report that gets published every year. It is part and parcel of continuous work that we're doing, and we're working really hard to make those links between our improvement activity, our self-assessment work that's going to be coming on stream, our risk management approaches, which are reported regularly, our business planning and one plan reporting, which comes regularly to committee. So we're really trying hard to consolidate, integrate and really strengthen, streamline a lot of that work and reporting.
Yeah, I think what coming to me out of this is that I hope you agree that it's important. The data is very important, but it's interpretation and the implications that are more important in this sense. These are given. So really what we want, I think that's saying, let's triangle the numbers and get into the feelings and the direction of it. Okay, fine. Janine, sorry, Councillor Rennie, you're patiently waiting to come in.
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and thanks for all those questions, Ellen, because they covered a lot of what I was going to say in an integrated way. I really commend this report. I think it's honest. It shows us, and it shows us a whole picture. So when you read through it, you can see the themes that are appearing throughout the report that are coming up in all the different areas. For example, attainment is linked into adverse childhood experiences. There's absolutely no doubt about it. It's not just about what people are being taught or, you know, what's happening in schools. It's about what people's experiences are. And what's coming across loud and clear to me in this report is, again, as I talked about in the police report, substance use, mental health, parental issues that are going on in the community. And a lot of these are under the remit of the Health and Social Care Partnership, as I said before. So for me, would it be possible to liaise with health and social care partners where that's such a huge issue that probably is across all areas of this portfolio, of the portfolios, to maybe do a report for us on what's been done about substance use, what's been done about, we've already got the mental health strategy and it's been brought to council before, but I'd like an update on that, maybe to Audit and Scrutiny, to see where we've progressed, and also an update to Audit and Scrutiny about what's happening with the area of substance use, because it's coming across to me at committee loud and clear and in this paper that there's an impact there. And I wondered if that would be something that you would see as could be a possibility moving forward, because I do think it's an excellent report. I'm sorry, I love a graph, but I'm very fond of them, but everybody's different, and I think making the report as accessible for everybody's needs, I think, is really important. But I also think to me, I read it as a story, and it was reading to me as a story of Clackmannanshire and what maybe we need to tackle.
So I think there are opportunities, Councillor, to do any of those kind of data deep dives, or, you know, deep dives in terms of the context of some of the challenges. And it sounds like this would be a worthwhile theme to kind of do one of those deep dives. But I do notice that Wendy Forrest, who is heavily involved in the alcohol and drugs partnership, is on the call. So I wondered if she might have any views on how we approach that through the existing partnership mechanisms that we've got.
Morning, councillors. Thank you for the opportunity, Cherie, to come in. Currently, we're doing some work within the alcohol and drug partnerships to just review where we're at and the work we've been doing. As you would expect, I'm more than happy to ask colleagues to have a report come forward around the work of the ADP and how it sits more closely aligned. I know that Simon Jones works very closely across the partnerships within Clackmannanshire Council, but I'm very happy to take that back and for us to provide a more formal update into Audit and Scrutiny, if that would be helpful. Thank you.
Is that fine, Councillor Rennie?
Yes, I just wanted to raise one other issue. A very strong positive, actually, that we've seen that there's zero suicidal ideation among young people. There's been no suicides among young people, which I think is a real celebration. Do we have any context as to why that is, that we've managed to keep those? I think it's probably unique across Scotland.
If I may come in, we don't have our usual contribution from educational psychology today. They're interviewing, I think, and weren't able to come to committee. But it's largely, as I think Leslie has explained to committee and to council before, it's unique across Scotland. The only other two places in Scotland who have achieved that down to zero level are Shetland and Western Isles, who have a very different demographic from Clickmanager, as you can imagine. It's not that they don't have any poverty, but they've got a different demographic with some rural poverty. But and that has been a trend that's been going down over a number of years. It's not something that's just happened, because quite often our figures can change quite rapidly just because of our small numbers, but this one is a downward trend over, I think it's in the papers that since 2012, I think, Judy, in terms of we've just been, and that's our assessment, and it's very difficult to put, to be absolutely sure without, proper research and evaluation, but Leslie has spoken to a number of the universities about this, but we believe quite strongly it's back to that early intervention and prevention work that we've been doing over a number of years. We've been really focusing on support for young people, counselling in schools over a number of years, and then the Family Wellbeing Partnership and the work that we've been doing within families and the prevention work that we've been doing with young people. So if you bring all of those things together, we believe that there has been a contributory factor of the context that we've been working in Clickmanager for a number of years that contribute to that zero. We're very well aware that things can change, but nevertheless, I think it is significant in terms of its achievement. I don't think there's anything else, Colin, Katrina, that you would want to add to that. Yeah.
Right, thank you. Councillor Balsillie.
I'd just like to pick up a theme that my colleagues have raised, and obviously it's great news about the very low suicide statistics for young people. But for me, I'm looking at the report, and in page 105, 106, 1.1, physical and mental health, age-related outcomes and poverty and vulnerability, a lot of it which falls to our health board colleagues. The table's just not populated for 24-25, and I was wondering why that was, because if you look at the rankings, it's where we fall, probably the bottom of all the local authorities. So I was wondering why that was and how we can improve upon that.
So maybe ask Judy just to come in and explain a little bit about the kind of data availability, because there are a number of indicators that don't have 24-25 data, which is an ongoing challenge. But I'll ask Judy to come in and provide her thoughts.
Yeah, some of this is to do with the very heavy emphasis in recent years on the benchmarking in particular. Obviously, it is one element of performance. The data source for a lot of these ones is the Scottish Public Health Observatory, and there is just a lag on the publication of data from that source. So what I would like to do is, instead of basically waiting until we can get all the benchmark data, I would like to move to reporting local figures that we can get from colleagues, even if the benchmark isn't available, because I think the timeliness is obviously a key concern that I've had for many years, and it has now been emphasised more in the revised statutory direction. And so I think a lot of what we need to do is sort of move the reporting earlier, because obviously a lot of the point of this is about addressing issues as they arise, taking action, being proactive, responding to things as they occur. So at the moment, it's not fully serving that purpose, obviously. And I think, so like I say, what I would like to do is look at more sources where we can get useful local indicators and maybe not have such an emphasis on the benchmarks. I think the benchmarks are important. There's no point in us celebrating a 1% improvement if every other council has improved by 10%. So we do need to know that because it is one of the key elements of performance management. But I think the other thing, just in relation to, a previous comment about outcomes, I think the one thing that we need to focus on is that the Alliance didn't pick these outcomes because they were easy. We picked them because they are the biggest challenges for the area. So that's where I think, you know, it's hard when you see a report with an awful lot of ambers and a lot of reds, but I think we do need to look at, you know, obviously these big challenges, not least with the reporting itself, you know. So I think there's work to be done around sort of moving it to a more timely focus, and even if there are, you know, local indicators that don't have benchmarks, if there's something we think are important locally, then they should be absolutely included in the suite of performance reports.
Okay, thanks, Judith. I think you're spot on. We do need that local data to react quickly. It's clearly as important indicators, we're clearly not getting in time to be able to evaluate it, and it doesn't help us when we're bottom of the ranking. I mean, on the positive, I think we could probably draw out the key national indicators at a council level would be a lot more. Sorry, I don't attend the audit and scrutiny a lot, but to focus on the things that you can influence as a council in terms of the statutory indicators, I think would be a good way to go as well. But I don't know if anyone else wants to sort of make a statement rather than a question. Chair, sorry.
Maybe if I can come in on that, I think absolutely in terms of data-driven decision making, and obviously Alison Vaughan and her team are looking at that, how we use our data, real-time data, to make more informed decisions rather than kind of a lag. We had a presentation from Luke. He's going to come back to the admin being the future group. We have 623 data sets, internal, external. We're using that data all the time. We're developing dashboards, so there'll be real-time indicators there that we can focus. We'll play into the comments Jade was making about costs, where we want to invest. We'll play into the performance management framework when reporting. We'll play in the further development of the one plan, one report that's been much embedded in the wellbeing directorate. We want to widen out to the council. So there's a lot of that important data insight driven information. So it's real time, and we can focus in at that point rather than lag on some of the information will get presented at committee at times.
Any further questions? No. In that case, I'll now propose the paper. Give Denny narrative on that. Ellen, do you want to second that?
Yeah, I do want to second it, and I would say that there's lots of information in here, and we need to be careful with that because you can get too much information sometimes. And I slightly disagree with Donald on the priorities. For me, it's not so much the national priorities or the national benchmarking that's important. It's our local priorities. And as a community planning partnership, we have chosen 3 very distinct local priorities because we know that they are the most challenging areas in Clackmannanshire, and we know that tackling these will make a difference and shift the dial on some of the big issues that we're facing. And I think Judith's absolutely right when she says that we should be expecting these areas to be red and amber just now, because that's exactly why we've chosen to tackle them and we've chosen to put our effort and our resources into them. What we need to do, as we just agreed that last year, is in 5 years' time, if those indicators are still red and amber, we need to be asking ourselves questions about that. So we need to keep an eye on that, and it's why data like this is really, really important. But for me, the local data and what's happening here in Clackmannanshire is much more important to me than what's happening potentially in Argyll and Bute or somewhere else, because it's here that we need to do interventions that make a difference to our communities based on the priorities that have been agreed by all partners who have a role in taking that forward. So it's a good report, but I think given that we have just set our new kind of local outcome improvement plans with partners, we need to keep a bit of a focus and an eye on how we're doing that. I often say at the Alliance, there's not, you know, the kind of indicators and the outcomes there, but they're probably in here, but they're probably hidden. And we need to find out how we pull that out to make sure that we're getting the data. So yeah, good and interesting report and a lot in there. Thanks.
We now move to debate. Councillor Rennie, you wish to debate?
Yeah, I just want to reiterate what I said earlier about I'm very pleased to see, oh, I'm okay, you can hear me, yeah. I'm very pleased to see a report that is honest about the kind of areas that we need to tackle, because that makes us able to, and I agree with Ellen, I think what's happening locally is the important thing, because we're a very unique council in a lot of the ways that we are as a council, and that other councils will not be. So I think it's really important to focus on our areas of concern, but I think what's really important about a report like this is it's telling the full story, and it's not just silos of bits of work, and that's how we're trying to work as a council more and more, that we're working across silos rather than looking at a siloed approach. And I think the report's really useful for that, because it shows where you can see how if there's mental health and substance use impacts, it's going to impact on young people. It'll impact on young people's well-being, it'll impact on their attainment. You know, all these areas are interlinked, and I think a report that shows the different stats where they're all interlinked is really important. I'd like to commend Judith and Cherie on the work that's gone into this. I think it's huge in terms of pulling all this information together. So, you know, thank you for that. I think it's been really helpful for me to read. I agree that in the future it'd be good to have a more kind of outcomes-based approach as well, in terms of what we're going to do next. Here's the stats, here's what's happening, here's what we are doing, here's what we're going to do. And as Ellen made the point, if we hadn't been doing a lot of the work that we've been doing up to now, would it be much worse? So I think, you know, it's important to have the context of the work that is going on, but also the context of, like I said, maybe we could pull in the HSCP to do a deep dive into things. So it gives us maybe a work plan moving forward about some areas of concern that we could focus in on as a committee to see what improvements could be made.
Thanks, Councillor. Anyone else? Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree and endorse and thank Judith and Cherie for a very comprehensive overview. And I think you do need that overview. I think it's been highlighted with artificial intelligence and handling data, we can now interrogate it a lot better. And in case I'm not being misinterpreted here, absolutely it's local data that we should be focusing on to direct our priorities and how we tackle those with our partners. The key point I was trying to make though was, in this blizzard of information that we're getting, is we also have these key statutory performance indicators where we're judged and ranked against other local authorities, and I think we need to be mindful of those as well. But absolutely the priority should be addressing our local areas. So I didn't in any way want to contradict the leader of the council or indeed Janine on that particular issue.
Anyone else? That's fine. Actual appendix. Do we approve the paper? Thank you. That's unanimous. Yes. I think at this point it's sensible to have a break. At 10:12, let's say we come back at 10 past. Or do you think that longer break for lunch? Just a 10-minute break at this point. Okay, just to recharge. Like a 10 past. Very good.